We've been talking, this show is fantastic. I want to start with you, Natasha. This is your first endeavor with Netflix, is that correct?
In this capacity.
In this capacity.
We did Orange is the New Black.
Orange is the New Black. So talk about how you thought about going on that show to start with. That was a breakthrough show for
Oh,
Netflix.
yeah. Well, I remember that it was psychedelic, and we'll be talking about psychedelics a lot today. But I remember that it was psychedelic for all of us actors at the time, that everybody essentially thought they were signing on to this unknown quantity, this a web channel or something. Like, we couldn't make heads or tails out of what was even being suggested. The material, though, was excellent. It was Genji Cohan.
Right.
I was actually on set of the finale of Weeds when I was reading the pilot for Orange is the New Black. So everybody really just jumped off a cliff and said the material is worth signing on for.
Even if it's a web series.
Web series, right.
That was how the actors felt.
Yeah.
I think it was. I think everybody, but also I think it gave us that really rare moment where we were creating something in a vacuum. We had no idea what it was. And so there was sort of a safety in that.
What was when you said web series, so it's like, it's not network television, it's not movies, it's not.
Yeah, I mean, at the time there was already HBO,
right.
and, NBC or any number of places that were doing
you
what we understood
places.
to be television. Do you want to come sign on to be on a television series for 7 years?
Right.
But, what does that mean? Do you want to come be on? We were like, on what, YouTube? It just, sorry. A bunch of you guys like, YouTube rocks or something.
So talk about this, sort of in getting these creators to start to do this, because the flywheel started, and now literally you have hundreds of. How many shows do you have on Netflix right now, original?
Well, it's quite a lot. I mean, in my team for English scripted series this year, it'll be about 60 new and returning seasons. But when you think about what's the catalog of originals, things that originate on Netflix somewhere in the world, it's thousands.
Thousands. That's what I thought. I spent the other night just watching trailers for Netflix shows, and it just kept clicking on the next one. How do you think about that when you started doing it? When you had to attract names to this, what was the original thinking when you came on from where? You came on.
Well, I've been at Netflix for 17 years.
17 years. That's right. Another
but I started my career in the feature film business, in development and production. So I was just smart enough and foolish enough to think we knew what
Why
we were
did you
doing.
do that? What was the...
in the film business?
No, why did you shift to Netflix?
I shifted to the internet in general. I was at a startup called Cosmo.com with a K for those who remember.
We remember.
Yeah. I was, I went into, I had a business development role there.
What did you develop there? I didn't realize you were at Cosmo.com.
Yeah, I was.
Wow.
I did business deals for them, so I did all of the business deals for home video, so VHS and DVD. Also did the deals with Krispy Kreme and...
Explain Cosmo for people who don't remember.
Order online, deliver to your door in under an hour. Anything from ice cream to razor blades to DVDs.
Were those the top two?
Ice cream and movies were the top two.
Okay. I wrote a terrible, I didn't know if that was going to work. Of course, it's Amazon Prime, essentially, or Amazon Prime now. At the time, I think I wrote a piece in the Wall Street Journal. I said they're one assault away from the end of their business, because I was like, people just arriving at your house, bringing things. Like, it was not nice, but I think I wrote that.
I think consumers were mostly happy to see them.
Yeah.
Because they were delivering things they want.
Yeah. So it was early, but the concept was really early. You moved over to Netflix because...
Well, Cosmo went out of business.
Yes, I know that.
I was one of the last people
I recall that story.
Turn the lights out. And it was through somebody I did business with at one of the studios, also was doing business with Ted, because we were doing very similar things, which is acquiring DVDs for an online delivery service of some kind. We did, Netflix leveraged the post office, and we had messengers at Cosmo.
Right.
So Ted was looking for somebody, and this guy thought that we would get along, and we did.
But you didn't make movies. You hadn't been in production.
No. Well, I had in a previous life.
Right.
In the feature film business.
Right.
But Netflix wasn't in that business yet.
So you went over to Netflix to do this show. You had been doing other features. I was talking about one backstage, that one of my favorite movies, But I'm the Cheerleader. It's about a cheerleader who turns into a lesbian, which of course I would love.
Yeah, I think she even was one before.
She was one before. That's right. She
was born.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Fair point.
Yeah. No, but I mean, that was the whole,
Yes.
if anyone who hasn't seen it, that was the whole idea, that she was like so utterly convinced that it could not be who she was.
Right, because she was a cheerleader.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But she had a lot of Melissa Etheridge posters. And
She
stuff.
did. Yeah, that was it. That was the
Yeah.
big signal. So, and if there was an indigo, it was absolutely sure.
Yeah.
So you decided to do this. Where were you in your career when you thought about this? Was it
Are we talking about Russian Doll?
Yeah. No, not Russian Doll, but Orange is the New Black. So you go over to do this, it becomes a big hit. Were you surprised by it? Because I think you didn't.
Yeah, I mean, and delighted. I mean, yeah, I would define my career before Orange is the New Black as Nowheresville, which is a professional term to define when you get, I'd had many lives.
Yeah.
75 today, it's my birthday, thank you. And, I'd been a child actor.
Yes.
I was on Pee-wee's Playhouse when I was 6, maybe. And then I'd had this, but I'm a cheerleader. The 90s were good to me. Early aughts, not so hot. So I was really grateful when Orange is the New Black came along. And I think it really, in many ways, reframed my sense of everything. I had just come off this play that I'd done with Nora Ephron and her sister Delia Ephron. And there were incredible women in that play. Tyne Daly, Rosie O'Donnell, Tracy Ellis Ross, Rita Wilson, Carol Kane. And I think that I had this experience of being on stage with them every night and feeling like, wait a minute, there's space for kind of all these, big personalities, these very like three-dimensional women, and then Nora and Delia at the head of it being so brilliant. And the next thing I knew, I was on set of Orange is the New Black, and with Cindy and with Genji, and we were talking before, Jodie Foster would be directing, and it was, Uzo was there, and Taylor was there, and there were just so many extraordinary women. And I found myself in this sort of new era of my career that, But I'm a Cheerleader was directed by Jamie Babbitt, one of the directors on Russian Doll. Slums of Beverly Hills have been written and directed by Tamara Jenkins, who I think is a giant filmmaker. But it hadn't really crystallized that there was this sort of other version of supporting and sort of holding space. I think sort of a false impression, like from advertising, essentially. It was this idea of assembly line propaganda. You just kind of look a certain way, be a certain way, and then you can hold a space. Right. And suddenly I was being, there was this kind of artistic sort of awakening of like, wait a minute, you mean that I can be sort of an odd bird and not 17 and still have ideas? What a revelation.
Yeah, let's talk
Game
about this.
changer.
So you talk about this because that's what Netflix really did carve out. You had a Hollywood way of doing things and then a Netflix way of doing things. And Ted's been a little more out there and stuff, but you've been very quiet about how you create. Talk a little bit about how you thought about this, because there was an open space that wasn't being filled, that wasn't a Tom Cruise movie or something that was sort of just a franchise. Not that some of the franchises aren't good, but they have a formula kind of.
Well, I think, stemming from the DVD service, we had 100,000 titles on DVD. And what you learn from that when you have a catalog of foreign films and indie films and documentaries, and not just what traditional Hollywood makes, but what's happening all around the world, you realize that people have really diverse and eclectic tastes, and you can program to those. And so, it's one of the insights that we had is we could differentiate ourselves on those very niches that gave us early success as a DVD by mail business.
Right.
Right. And so going into original programming, there were a couple key things we wanted to accomplish. One was, with the first set of titles, was to sort of change this conception of what content made for the internet is. Because people think of it as, user-generated content stuff, maybe funny
or
funny or die. It was all that. There wasn't real premium elevated content made specifically for the internet. And House of Cards changed that conversation. And it was really up until the day that House of Cards launched that people were thinking, well, why is David Fincher making webisodes? I was like, well, he's not. Right.
He's making real.
And Orange was something different.
So you were spending money on these things. That was one of the things, was that you were actually putting a lot in.
Premium budgets, just as any of the premium networks would spend, and putting people all shapes and sizes and walks of life on television. We were confident enough that there would be an interest in whatever Genji Cohen did after Weeds, and the memoir was so strong, Piper Kerman's memoir, and you could just see it was a window into a world, but also kind of a mirror that there were characters that real people can identify with. And I think audiences really respond to something fresh and different that doesn't look and feel like everything else on television.
So talk about the experience. So you did that, you were in the show, you didn't create Orange is the New Black, you were one of the characters in it. Talk about how you got to Russian Doll, because it's an unusual plot. It's not something that, like, I can't see you pitching it to ABC and it going over.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah.
Although something, I guess, sort of like that did happen, which is Amy Poehler and I, who, another giant, she had called me out of the blue one day. This was back before streaming had really kicked in. I was watching NYPD Blue on a loop, slowly becoming Detective Sipowicz, if anyone remembers. I was having a dark day at home alone when Amy called, and she said, as long as I've known you, you've always been the oldest girl in the world. Do you think we should make a TV show about that? And I looked around and I said, absolutely. I was doing nothing else, and it was a thrill to get to work with Amy. We kind of came up with this idea. We had some sort of similar threads. Nadia, the name of the character from Russian Doll, who I always name my characters Nadia after Nadia Comaneci, my favorite gymnast. And, some basic ideas that we wanted to sort of tell something a little bit existential, a little bit what it would be like for, a woman who wasn't old enough yet to really be in what she was experiencing as a feeling of Act 3 of her life. So we paired me with a bunch of older people, Marla Gibbs, Rita Moreno, Fred Willard, and so on, Ellen Burstyn. It was great. It was called Old Soul. We sold it to NBC. They did not pick it up. I'm not sure why. And then Amy turned to me and she said, what show would we really want to make? At that point, we were, I think, much closer as kind of collaborators. We'd known each other in passing, but had never really spent this kind of concentrated time together. And she really said, what is it that we really want to say if there were no rules, if there were no restrictions, if this wasn't a network TV show? And very quickly it started becoming these conversations that we were talking about before, I'm a strange loop, multiverse, choose your own adventure. What does it all mean? What's it all about?
How did you
talk
get to
about Viktor Frankl?
How did you get to multiverse? Because it's the only time I've ever discussed multiverse was with Elon Musk on stage here.
And I would say that he probably is getting there with far more concrete information and education to back it up, would be my first guess. So I think to me, frankly, just, I know it's a room full of people who probably actually know what a lot of these things mean, but the thing about Hollywood is that I think that I'm somebody who always had a deep curiosity about these kinds of things. I was a film and philosophy double major and at Tisch. I think I always was just a very curious sort of, quantum character. I think I never had a really I always had a suspicion that there was something curious happening sort of between what we define as sort of like the ether and the things tethering us,
Reality.
Reality.
I mean, Natasha's mind is a multiverse.
Okay, all right.
I mean, if you...
Thanks, Cindy.
Well, no, it's true, in the best way, like if you're around her for any length of time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a little bit, I think funny. It's brain damage. So anyway, the truth is we went about the business of what I truly believe that Netflix excels at, and why I think it's revolutionary, is really brought them the show that we really wanted to make.
Not the one you thought they wanted.
And
is that what you had been doing, editing yourself, saying this is what will sell?
I would go further and say that I spent a lifetime doing that, and that the sort of heaviest, most life-affirming, sort of artistic, but also human revelation for me, and creating Russian Doll and then having a positive instead of sort of bullying response to it has been, sort of telling the truth in my way, and that's suddenly okay is a game changer.
So that's been a brand thing for Netflix, is that you guys can do anything you want. Nobody seems to have followed in that idea. No one's doing that version of it. Is that still the way you think about doing it, or do you have much more control? You control what you pick,
Yeah.
But it seems like you're getting a lot, you just shined on Shonda Rhimes, Ryan Murphy. Actually was an intern at the Washington Post with Ryan Murphy, which is kind of funny. He was the worst intern ever. But as it turned out, it didn't matter.
Great showrunner.
Exactly. Yeah. He was great. He was just mean to everybody at the Post. It was terrific to see. Is that something you can continue to do as you get bigger? Because you're bringing in really, big names, and the idea of total freedom can be problematic.
Well, we want to entertain the world, so we need to have a lot of artists come join us. From the very beginning, we wanted to create an environment that was freeing and not stifling. It's part of our own corporate culture, freedom and responsibility, and you hire smart people, you give them the right support, and then you let them do their work. And we've extended that to the folks that we work with on the creative side, and I think to really good results, And also, I think a lot of the industry operates in a culture of fear, and we don't.
Yeah.
So we're not afraid to try a bunch of different things, some of which may work, some of which may not. And it's part of our culture to embrace mistakes and failure and learn something from it, corporately. And we want to encourage our artists to just really reach for that thing they really have been dying to do. And that's certainly the case with Natasha.
What do you judge the shows on? I mean, I wanted to, One Day at a Time, which was a great show way back. I watched it when I was a kid. Great show. What did you judge that on? Because it got a lot of pushback when you guys stopped it. Tremendous show. Well done.
Yeah, well done show. The basic calculation is how much viewing are we getting for what it costs, right? Other things.
Every calculation.
Right. That's pretty basic. But, we also look at, is it reaching different audiences? Is it gaining critical acclaim? Is it doing something for us as a business that we like? And One Day at a Time, frankly, if you looked at it just from a season 1 perspective, we wouldn't have renewed that show on a viewing to cost basis. But it was such a well-made show, and we were so proud of Norman and Gloria, Mike Royce, and everybody involved in it, that we wanted to see, could we broaden the audience? Could it gain some more steam? And it would grow a little bit, but we just couldn't find the broad audience that we thought it could get and it deserved to get. And so after 3 seasons, we
Does it
decided
have to get a
end it.
broad audience? You're talking about creating for lots of different groups.
It has to get a big enough audience ultimately to justify the cost of it. And in that particular case, it didn't.
How do you think you're judged by Netflix in terms of, what do you think about?
I take a bit of relief in the algorithm, if I'm being honest.
Okay, explain that. Relief in the I never heard someone say the
I think that there's, maybe I've just described I'm not a big fan of reality, but then in other ways, it has its charms, and I think that boundaries are can be healthy for a creative process in a way, So what that means, and I probably never told you this, but for example, when we would be, fighting light, Russian Doll is all night shoots because I'm a big Abel Ferrara fan. No, because the show takes place at night, and so every day, you're a kind of low budget show essentially. It's not Game of Thrones, and you're fighting, and the sun's coming up. People are like, God, I just wish we had more money. And I'd be like, well, they ran the numbers, guys. The algorithm suggests that we only get this much kind of for this show. Sorry, I'm not Tom Cruise. Let's try to make the day. You know what I mean? Because what do you want me to tell you? If we had, but there was also a good news there, right? Of because we're not Tom Cruise, we also don't have to deliver Tom Cruise expectations. So how great that we get to do all these weird Talmudic things that probably, you never see a Tom Cruise Talmud picture. And then I would say almost never, and a big body of work. So in many ways, I would find that to be an element of a relief to that. And I think, speaking frankly, also, I had obviously, I have emotional a human attachment to Netflix. It was almost like I think of them as I think of something as Irving Thalberg or something. I have such a kind of love for old Hollywood, and to watch sort of what Netflix became. Ted, you know, I love Ted. To watch
Ted
what,
Sarandos.
to watch kind of from where we were. Like, I remember our first Emmys party, and it was just like me and Taylor walked in, and it was just Cindy and Ted standing there like, hey, thanks for coming to the party. You know, now, 6 years in, we were kind of like, all right, we'll stay for 15 minutes, right? I mean, we're on the net, yeah. And then all of a sudden now to be part of this ride of watching something like this get created in my lifetime, just it's fascinating, you know? So I don't know if that answered your question.
No, it was good though. It's fine. I like the Tom Cruise Talmud movie. I'm still back.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for it. He's just a rabbi. It's a Yentl mashup. It's a remake of Yentl that Tom Cruise has suddenly decided is his Act 3.
And we're going to use some of the scooters outside.
Yes,
you know.
good.
Yeah, good.
Always adding, always building restrictions.
Right, exactly.
Now you know why I like to work with Natasha.
Yeah, exactly. So you get a lot of this with a lot of the creators moving to you. They're sick of the system. They're sick of the system. Where do you're also spending a lot of money. Whenever I visit Hollywood executives, the regular ones, they're like, well, they just spent a lot of money. And that's what they say. They say, oh, they just spend a lot of money. They just pay a lot of money. And then I'm always like, maybe you just suck. Like, I don't know. Perhaps that's what's going on here. And it's a really interesting, at first, as you remember, Jeff Bewkes, you know, they're like, Lithuania? I forget what country. Latvia. Albanian Army.
Yes.
Right, yes. They call it. Now you're considered an enormous force. What's changed at the company in that? What's your worry that's going to happen at Netflix?
Well, I think the thing that I think about is making sure that we stay true to the core of what we're trying to do, which is provide entertainment for the world and provide an incredible working environment for the best artists in the world. You know, if David Fincher and Genji Cohen didn't have a good experience with us on their first shows, they wouldn't have come back for more, but they both have, right? And so one of the things I'm most proud of is that we've created, I think, one of the best working environments for artists in Hollywood, both in the film and television side, and now we're bringing that around the world. And we're also, you know, allowing creators to stay in their home country, be successful in their first language, and then we do the job of distributing content around the world. And I think that is truly revolutionary. It's one of the things that when I first joined Netflix back in the DVD days, I was really excited about, because you had access to foreign movies that, like my family in Nebraska could get them in their mailbox, right? Now, with the press of a button on any of your smart devices, you can get all this great content from all around the world. But the keys, I think, is providing a great working experience for artists, making sure that you're supporting them, and giving them the confines that they need to be successful, but also giving them as much freedom as they need to.
So do you need to have hits? Do you need to have, is Russian Doll a hit?
It's all relative to its size, right? Russian Doll's a hit for what it costs in that dimension. It also happened to really break through critically, and, you know, people around the world are loving this very unusual but funny and touching and smart story that wouldn't have existed otherwise. I mean, I'm incredibly proud of it.
But you need like House of Cards or the bigger, or Orange is the New Black, that carried it. The reason I watched Netflix and found the other things is that was
I think what is a hit show? Like Russian Doll is the most important thing to them. Some it may be things. Some it may be a Casa de Papel, which is huge for us in Europe, but less so in the United States. Or it could be you love documentaries and you spend most of your time watching documentaries. The majority of our members watch documentaries, which is unusual for any kind of service.
How do you look at, both of you, how do you look at the competitors? How do you look at HBO now? That was where a lot of the seeds of what Netflix is HBO-like. The idea that they could create unusual things that were not on regular television. And I think it was because it's
I have a sort of curiosity that I mean, it does seem like there's some sort of stacking that's happening. HBO, AT&T?
Yeah, now it is, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when the head of HBO left, Richard.
Right. And, you know, I'm a big fan of, you know, calling. But I mean, it's a curiosity, I think, in a bigger scale of like, what is anything anymore? I mean, it's sort of, yeah, you have more information than I do.
What do you think? Do you want to work for the phone company?
I don't know. The question is, does it matter anymore? Or is it, does it matter if it's a cell phone video? I mean, is an Instagram video going to become the new sort of content?
Is it? You're the content creator.
Yeah.
You have this
I think
with Maya Rudolph, right?
Yes, I have a company with Maya Rudolph. It's called Animal Pictures.
It's called what?
Animal Pictures.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, so from that point of view, I think that, yes, absolutely. Any place that is open to kind of, these are shows that other people have even written and are bringing to us to produce for them. So how incredible. I would love to see as many great voices, new voices, be heard and have platforms for their work to be seen. So I'm glad that there are many places for it.
What does an Instagram movie look like? Say, if Instagram came to you and said, Natasha, we'd like you to make an Instagram film.
Yeah.
Do you see that as content?
I do think that it's a curiosity that we're now experiencing, a first generation that has never known. It's like this great social experiment that's happening in real time, where we have a generation that's never known a life without a device. Mm-hmm. And for us, that there is this like utter loss of solitude, reflection. I mean, I do think that there are big questions, and that maybe for a young person, I don't know that I would have the attention span. We're sort of like this last generation that knows both worlds, that knows a time that we can remember when none of this existed, and to actually sit and watch something, you needed full attention span. So often in the Russian Doll writers' room, I would be like, is it more interesting than a cat video? It's a real question. I mean, are you going to be able to keep someone's focus? When we watch things now, we watch them while multitasking, text messages, New York Times crossword puzzle, whatever it is, so it's, so I don't know, maybe if it was an Instagram movie, at least they'd only be doing one thing because they couldn't be playing with their phones.
Right, yeah. I watched Russian Doll on my phone.
Did you?
Yeah.
How was it?
Good.
Good, Chris.
I don't care. Yeah, I don't
Good,
care. I don't care where I watch. I don't care where I watch a lot of stuff.
Well, and so maybe, that's the question. Does it matter? I mean, I guess
my kids watch a lot on their phones.
I will say that it's heartbreaking, like the filmmaker in me. When we were at the premiere of Russian Doll and we got to see those episodes screened on a big screen, it's like, if you think there's Easter eggs in your cell phone, just wait till you see it on a real screen. So it breaks my heart.
Yeah, it's interesting. We had George Lucas at the same conference as the YouTube creators, and they were very excited to meet him because they love Star Wars and stuff like that. And they're like, when is he coming? When is he coming? And I brought them up to him, and I said, these are the creators of YouTube. And he goes, the people who film puppies, throwing puppies on the highway. It's like, Jesus Christ. And that's what he's like, you've ruined cinema. You've ruined it all. And they were like, oh. And he goes, why don't you give money to preserve film? And they're like, okay.
Smart play.
I know, right?
Smart play.
But I never forgot that, throwing puppies on a highway. Like, that's what you do for a living.
Yeah, they're in trouble for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, exactly. So, Cindy, when you think about it, you also moved into movies, and you released a movie, and you won all kinds of awards. Talk about that move. That was an astonishing thing. I saw it in the theater. I did not see it on Netflix.
Roma?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Scott Stuber,
who saw Roma here? Did everybody see it?
Yeah,
amazing.
Great film.
Amazing film.
Scott Stuber, who joined us to oversee the film initiative, had a pre-existing relationship with Alfonso Cuarón, the director. And it was a big get for us to have that kind of filmmaker and actually that specific film. But it's very challenged from a theatrical release standpoint, and Alfonso knew that. It's not like a studio is going to be jumping up and down to say, I'm going to release a black and white film in an indigenous language on 5,000 screens. It's not happening. Right. And he really wanted people all around the world to see it, and we could do that for him.
Right.
We also did a theatrical release for that film.
Who do you feel is your competitor right now?
I think, honestly, sounds like a cop-out, but we really just are focused on what we're doing and executing.
So that is a cop-out. Who is your competitor?
Our business side? It's all forms of entertainment, right? It's the traditional movie
studios. Is there any
studios.
traditional company that you think is, Disney's trying its streaming thing. They're all trying their versions of it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any one that stands out as the competitor.
Hulu, maybe.
Hulu's been growing nicely over the last few years, but they're domestic, right? Disney Plus, it'll be great to see what they do. I mean, we've anticipated that all of these traditional players would enter into our space. The more successful we were at building an on-demand subscriber base with content, the more likely they were going to be to stop licensing to us, right? It's actually one of the reasons why we started original content in the first place.
Right.
Is we believed this shift would all happen. It's just taken many years longer than we thought. So we welcome it.
And finally, Natasha, before you end and get questions from the audience, where do you imagine you want to stay at somewhere like Netflix? You don't want to go back to the old system. You didn't meet a huge movie, or if they came to you with something like that. How do you think, as an artist, what you want, or as you created this production company?
Yeah.
How do you think about it?
I think that there's sort of big philosophical ramifications to the potential of content, creating content that could be so widely disseminated. And, that there's, the reach is extraordinary. When you talk about that, or, I've been on these, international Netflix press tours with Orange is the New Black, and they really, know your work, which is, for me, obviously, very much what I want it to say, whether it's on your cell phone or IMAX Russian doll, is I want to sort of tell a story about, inner brokenness and sort of ending a cycle of shame around that on a human level. I want sort of, that would be my goal when I think about, a little girl who felt like me, who's kind of like a weirdo, and she's getting bullied at school, and she feels a little bit like an outsider. I want her to feel like she feels seen, and it's going to be okay. Stay on the bus, don't quit. You're going to be all right. Keep fighting the good fight. So, ultimately, that's really what I, want to have carry in any number of ways. So for me, I would say that Netflix has been, a gorgeous partner in that. They seem truly invested in that as well.
All right, so there's some news here. You're renewing Russian Doll.
Do a season 2, Natasha?
Me, Cindy.
You.
Same show.
Just weirder.
Just weirder?
Yeah.
Are you sure? Nadia Volvikov is a coder,
yeah,
as you know. So I guess it would be somewhat appropriate to maybe have this be the time and place to say yes, very much so. I would love to do that, Cindy.
Okay. All right.
I would love it.
Questions from the audience. We just have a second. Go ahead.
Great. Cindy, it's Mark Mahaney at RBC. Congrats on all the success. I think the reason that these launches of Disney and other companies isn't going to impact your businesses because of the original content you've created. Could you talk about how much better you think you could get at developing and producing original content? Natasha mentioned algorithms. You didn't really mention that. Do you think you have a major data advantage in addition to the culture advantage you have in terms of producing original content?
Are you the Amazon of content? So Amazon does have a studio, don't they?
Well, we've only been in the original content business for about 6 years now. So we're just getting started relative to everybody else out there, and we're learning a lot. We do have a lot of information about what our members like to watch, but the reality is when it comes down to the decision of, which project to make and who to back, it's a very human decision. It's a conversation with Natasha and Amy about the show they want to create and then believing in them, and that's that's pretty basic and fundamental, and I think that's the real differentiating advantage is our culture, our not being afraid to take pretty sizable risks in the content space, and continuing to support artists.
And you don't give numbers out?
We occasionally do.
Occasionally?
Yeah.
With the Bird one?
Bird Box, yeah.
I haven't watched that yet.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not watching the Bird Box. It seems creepy. All right, last question, very quick.
Hi, John Fort from CNBC. Natasha, I'm curious, Netflix has a lot of data, as we were just hearing. How much of that do you view as being potentially toxic to the creative process? If you could have data on who was watching, what they liked, what they didn't like, would that help you make a better product, or would it get in your head too much, perhaps, about...
That's a good question. We asked that of Modern Family. He wanted more data. He wanted to
he
know where
did?
the laugh points were. He watched Twitter after the show to see when it was. He very much wanted data.
Yeah, I mean, at what point would I be getting it, is I guess the question. Like, spilt milk data? I don't really need in my life. That sounds like a headache.
You could decide whether you're getting it
I like this
immediately or delayed.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it depends if I would have to take the information in that exchange. In other words, it might be fun to get the data and then decide if I agreed or disagreed creatively.
And some creators want more information, some want less.
And you give that to them.
We absolutely will.
You will, but you don't offer it necessarily.
Depends. I mean, Natasha knows some information about the show, and there's a wealth of information that is available. Some creators are very curious and they want to know very specific things. But generally, once they're going into, say, the next season, they want to be kind of pure and just
right. Well, when you think about sort of, a test screening audience, let's say, would be the more traditional example of that, I think that it would be challenging to be in a position where you have to then take the notes of, these 8 women, they thought that this character was unlikable. In that situation, I want to be like, I don't care, But in certain other things, like this was not tracking, let's say, or they couldn't, follow. So I think it's a little bit, it definitely could be useful, and then in other ways, crushing and unnecessary.
Yeah. I don't care thing is a great thing.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a curiosity, right? That we do have things like Twitter and stuff now. So which is such a weird thing, the idea that you can almost get an immediate response and sort of dialogue going and sort of theories and stuff. So it's bizarre that in a weird way we all kind of are receiving data whether we want it or not, unless I guess, you live inside of a bird box.
Yes, right.
Wrap that up. Nobody lives inside of a bird box.
All right. Very quickly, Dylan, because we got to go.
Sure. This question's for Cindy. Is there anything about the old television, the sort of broadcast sitcom world that Netflix has left behind that you guys, Ted, your colleagues, sort of envy or feel inspired by? Or is it all sort of archaic and limited and boxed in?
No, I don't see it as archaic and limited at all. I think every medium is different. I mean, look, we all grew up loving television. I watched a whole lot of it.
What was your favorite
as a kid? Well, depending on which time period, but I remember Charlie's Angels being fairly formative for me.
And Natasha.
Sabrina Duncan was my favorite angel.
Of course.
Of course.
Hello.
Me? I remember as a kid I was always into things like the Carol Burnett show, Tracy Ullman show.
Amazing.
I used to really enjoy that kind of
So
stuff.
those are formative still. I was talking about the concept.
But to answer your question, I do think the multicam sitcam is a really interesting art, and it's we've tried a number of them on Netflix to varying degrees of success, and it's still a form that we believe in and want to figure out how to kind of continue.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you two so much. I really appreciate it.